Wolfpack. Welcome to your Toes to Nose Mobility Series, where I teach you how to unlock your body joint by joint. In this first episode, we're going to be covering the big toe and showing you some mojo and the bottom of your foot. Now, these areas commonly are not looked after very well, and when you spend some time on them, it's going to make a big difference in the way you feel and move. For these sequences, you're going to need a few items which are pretty easy to get a hold of. Now, a lacrosse ball or tennis ball are going to be the easiest to find, and they're going to work very well. I recommend having both, one softer and one harder. Now, you can also go to yogatuneup.com and purchase release balls. These are very easy to travel with and probably have the best feeling surface and give to any of the release work we do. Now, if you have a PVC pipe pull at your gym, this is going to be helpful also. We'll see that later. And some sort of band or bungee or strap that we're going to use for one of our sequences. Now, let's get started. We always want to start with the bottom of the foot. The bottom of the foot is called the plantar fascia. This is one of the most restricted places in the human body. If you're wearing shoes all day, especially dress shoes, or you're on your feet, or you've never addressed this area, this can be quite locked up and causing havoc all the way up to even the top of your head. Now, what we need to do is grab one of our softer release balls before we move to the lacrosse ball, and it's going to be quite simple. We want to place the ball underneath our foot. You can hold on to a wall or just your hips, and I want to start rolling forward and backwards. Now, whenever we're doing any type of release work, a scale of 1 to 10 is easy to use. An 8 out of 10 is the most pain we ever want to experience when we're releasing a muscle tissue. So if 10 is the worst pain you've ever felt, we never want to go beyond an 8 out of 10. We want to roll forward to backwards and spend a lot of time pushing into that ball. Now, we don't want to just roll like we're making cookie dough. We can stop and push. We can find different places where we push into the ball. Notice how the softer release ball will give. I can also pin the ball and then spin like I'm making mashed potatoes. I can go across the middle of my foot, and we want to hit every inch of the bottom of the foot. When you first start to do this, if you don't feel anything, just wait a minute or two. We want to spend at least 2 to 3 minutes, even upwards of 5 minutes per foot. Now, if you have really tender feet, a tennis ball or soft release ball will be plenty. If you're not feeling much, then I recommend going ahead and switching to your lacrosse ball. Eventually, we want to be able to tolerate the lacrosse ball, but for some people, this can be too much. Notice how there's no sets or reps. We just want to put the clock on and spend about 2 to 3 minutes on each foot. If you have lots of time, 5 minutes is preferable. Stop in places where you feel tension. You can curl your toes. You can raise them up. Remember, pin and spin. You can even stop at the back of your foot by the heel. Just roll that tissue, and as you spend time here, you'll notice how locked up this area is. We always start with the bottom of the foot, just like when you go to build a house, you set the foundation. Okay? And switching sides. We always treat both sides, so if you have any pain on the right side, never just roll one side or just release one side. We always treat both sides. Remember, you can take this to an 8 out of 10 on the pain scale. You're not doing any damage. You're not causing any harm. You want to go in this area and really work this tissue. It is completely locked up most of the time, and we need to do this daily. No matter what we're doing for our workout, we want to make sure we start with the bottom of our foot and we work up joint by joint. To have a pipe, pole, or stick that's lying around your house or gym, this can be even a more effective way at releasing the bottom of the foot than even the lacrosse ball. Now, I will warn you, this is a little bit more intense and concentrated, so spend some time with the lacrosse ball before going to this variation. Now, if you're able to tolerate this, this is a good sign that the bottom of your foot is healthy. What we want to do is the same thing where we place the pole underneath my foot, and now I want to try to go ahead and curl my toes to the ground while keeping my heel on the ground. For a lot of you, you might not be able to get the toes to the ground and just have to slowly work your way there. Now, something I can do is I can act like I'm wrapping up a sleeping bag, and I can slowly start to work that pull by inching with my feet and pulling that pull back towards my heel. That is going to be almost like a cookie dough roller over that tissue and can be quite helpful and beneficial, even though it can be quite intense. Remember, if you're holding your breath or this pain has passed beyond an 8 out of 10 on the pain scale, you need to ease up and spend some time on the tennis ball or lacrosse ball. If you're able to, something that I've found to be very helpful is to descend into a squat while having the pull underneath my feet. While grabbing onto an object or using balance, if you're able to, you can descend into a low squat. And this is actually a great way of taking care of the tissue and incorporating it into something that we might do in our workout. I can do repetitions just like I would. Now, it's not going to be a perfect squat, and you might need something to hold on to like a wall, but this is taking and moving through a range of motion, and it's going to make a big difference in the way your foot feels and the way you're able to squat deeply. Once you've released the bottom of your foot, it's time to move on to the big toe. And I know what you're thinking, crazy, right? But believe it or not, the big toe is one of the most important and beautiful joints in the human body. Now, the big toe is the way we create propulsion or forward movement. When you run, when you lunge, or when you're a baby and you crawl, the big toe is how you created and pushed off and created forward movement. Now, the big toe should normally have at least about 65 degrees of range of motion. You don't need to pull out your compass or your protractor, but what you can do is take your foot without your sock, and I want you to just pull on your big toe. Does it move? For most of you, it might not move very well, and you might not be able to get to 65 degrees. What I want you to do is check each of your big toes and see, is there a difference between the two? Does one feel more stuck than the other? Okay? And that's where we're going to get started. So the big toe, believe it or not, can cause problems all the way up to even your neck or your shoulder. If the big toe doesn't move well, then the ankle can't move well. So what happens is the ankle locks up and gets tight. Well, if the ankle locks up, what happens to the hip? You got it, the hip locks down and the hips don't move well. Well, if the hips aren't moving, the spine's not going to move too well either, so the spine locks down. Well, guess what? If the spine doesn't move, neither does your shoulder blade. So you can have shoulder issues or issues in your low back that are caused by your big toe. So in our next sequence, we're going to work on releasing and working the mobility of your big toe. The first way we can improve range of motion at the big toe is to do some active, isolated stretching. You just need to cross your leg over your knee, and we're going to grab the big toe by itself. What we're going to do is we're going to crank that big toe until it gets stuck, and we're going to hang out here for about 6 to 8 seconds. Now, I know what you're thinking. I feel like I'm going to break my toe. You're not. The big toe absolutely has an awesome range of motion, and you're not going to be able to do that. What I want you to look for is when you stretch your big toe, you're going to see this tendon pop in the middle of the bottom of the foot, that plantar fascia. Now, on the big toe, whether it's the right or left side, that isn't moving well, generally this tendon is going to be very big and developed super well. So I want you to think, if your left big toe doesn't move well, you're going to compensate and use this tendon in this bottom of the foot to make up for that lack of range of motion. So I want you to notice when you stretch to the left and the right side, which tendon is bigger and more developed. That's generally your more restricted side of the big toe. Once I hold this for about 6 to 8 seconds, I'm going to ease off on pressure, and then I'm going to re-crank at it. I am cranking hard, okay? You might feel this stretch in the bottom of the foot, as well as even at the back of the side of the ankle. Of course, treat both sides, take the other toe, stretch, And you can notice on this side, look how much bigger that tendon is on the bottom of the foot. So what does that tell me? That my left big toe doesn't move as well as my right big toe. That's a quick way to know which side is more restricted and you might need to spend a little bit more time on. Once again, about 6 to 8 seconds, crank, 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 ease off, and then crank again. And you can go after this. 8 seconds, and relax. Let's move on. Once we finish stretching the big toe, we need to add more load. That way our mobility will continue to improve and it will actually stick and stay around versus if we just stretched. What we're going to do next is the samurai sit. We're going to act like we're having dinner in Japan. We're going to spread our knees wide and bring my toes close together. And then I'm going to sit and lean back and add pressure. Now, if you've never done this before, I recommend being on an exercise mat. But if you're comfortable enough, you can go ahead on the rubber floor. We want to go ahead and sit back with my butt almost on my heels for about 1 to 2 minutes. Just hang out here, breathe, make yourself as tall as possible, and really sit and balance on those toes. I'm going to show you guys what that looks like from the side. So if I flip to the side, once again, knees wide, I'm going to bring my toes together, and then I'm going to sit back and add pressure on those toes. Hang out, breathe. Once again, 1 to 2 minutes. 30 seconds isn't long enough, and we need to spend a lot of time on these toes. I can even, in this position, lean from side to side to get a little more pressure on each of the toes. Once you've mastered the samurai sit and can hang out there comfortably for a few minutes, it's time to move on to Houdinis. This is where that band, strap, or bungee is going to come into play. Now, what we're going to do is sit down. Depending on the length of your strap, you might need to go around once, twice, or maybe even 3 times. I'm going to go ahead and wrap around, starting at the top of my ankles, twice. I need 2 extra straps so I can hold and pull and keep my ankles together. Now, I've got to warn you, be careful in this next step. Don't fall on your face. Don't become a YouTube gym fail. Grab both straps, use the bench, and slowly and safely lower down to the point where you're on the mat. Now, unlike the samurai, my knees and ankles are together in this variation, and that's going to be a lot more intense when it comes to stretching the big toe. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull on these straps, which is going to hold my ankles together, because the ankles want to run away from each other. All I'm going to do is sit back just like I did before, but you're going to notice it is quite a bit different, and you'll be surprised how much more this stretches the big toe. It's very easy to tell which toe is the more restricted in this stretch. I'm going to hang out here for 1 to 2 minutes again. We're going to breathe, never stop breathing. Make sure you breathe through this. And I'm pulling those straps the whole time, and I'm sitting on those heels. Now, once we get comfortable here and we start getting stronger and those toes have more mobility, we need to take it a step further. What we're going to do is we're going to add a bench, and we're going to do a little bit of a Michael Jackson lean smooth criminal. So I'm going to take both bungees and I'm going to hold them in one hand, and then I'm going to slowly, slowly, slowly lean back, lean with it, rock with it, and add more pressure. Of course, if I do this with body weight, that would be even better, but some of you might need the balance of the bench. This is the furthest and most advanced variation of the big toes and adds the most load to the toes. It's going to make them stronger, and it is really a game changer when it comes to improving your big toe mobility. And then we let the straps go, and boom, we're all set to go. Our final step in the big toe sequence before we move on to strengthening is going to be the wall, calf, and toe stretch. Now, the way this is going to work is going to be where we place our hands up against the wall, and I'm going to lower my heels to the ground until I've got a good deep calf stretch where my full foot is on the ground with my legs locked and straight. Once I'm here, I'm going to hang out and enjoy that nice calf stretch, but we're going to add continued mobility of the big toe. All we're going to do here is we're going to raise up and do a calf raise on my big toe. You can hear the popping. That's not a bad thing. I hang out, and then I'm going to drop and lengthen those calves. Up Nice and slow, like a ballerina, on our toes. Down and slow. Of course, to make this harder, all I've got to do is step back, but only go as far back as you can keep your heels in contact with the ground with straight and locked legs. Enjoy the calf stretch, raise up on the toes, and we'll continue to develop a range of motion by moving the big toe through what we call dorsiflexion, or working towards that 65 degrees of range of motion. We've spent a lot of time developing new range of motion at our big toe. But for the body to keep and maintain that new range, we need to make sure we hit save on the document and we give strength in those new positions. To do that, we're going to focus on some toe lift-offs. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to keep our 4 smaller toes on the ground while we lift and raise our big toes as high as we can. This is active strength and will really tell you how much usable range of motion you have. Notice your big toe might not lift off without the other toes joining it. You need to practice this, and if you can't get your big toe to move by itself, you need to spend more time learning how to control just your big toe. We want to hang out here for at least 30 seconds just like we would a plank. All right, for our second exercise, we're going to lift all the toes in the air, and then I just want you to try to tap your big toes. Notice your other toes might want to try to tap the ground. Try to resist that. If you struggle with these exercises, what has happened is your foot has lost its intrinsic strength, and you need to develop that again to have safe and strong feet. All right, one more time. We're going to lift just the big toe and not the other 4 toes. We are looking for at least 65 degrees of range of motion. Then we're going to lift all the toes and just tap the big toe. Those are our main 2 strengthening movements, but at the same time, we want to work a little bit more. So what I want you to try to do as a fun challenge is try to spread your toes and separate your toes, and then I want you to try to bring your toes together. Spread them out, bring your toes together. Spread them out, bring your toes together. Let me show you a couple side shots. First, we're going to lift the big toe by itself. Then we're going to tap the big toe. Then we're going to spread the toes. Then I'm going to bring them together. Once you've developed the strength and the ability to control your big toe in that last sequence, now I'm going to really see what you're made of. What we're going to do is we're going to descend into a deep squat and try to do the same thing we just did, where we lift the big toe without the other 4 toes lifting, and then we're going to try to tap our big toe. Now this is going to be incredibly difficult because we've shortened and we're at our end range of motion, and that means it's a lot harder to develop mobility in that position. But at the same time, this is a drill that you should work your way towards, and it's going to really test how much you can control your big toe and how much range of motion is actually usable by the body. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a kettlebell, we're going to descend into a deep squat, and if you notice, I'm going to do everything I can to lift up the big toes. And I'm not going to get as far as I did when I was just standing up, but I'm going to lift, then I'm going to lift all the toes and just try to tap the big toe. Okay, once again, all the toes on the ground. I've shortened and gone to my end range, and that makes it even harder to lift the toes. And then I'm going to practice my toe taps. The last thing we're going to do in our episode 1 of our Toes to Nose Mobility series is to connect the big toe and the ankle together while strengthening our calves. If you run, you need to be doing this drill, and if you just spent all that time doing the mobility work in this series, you need to make sure that you add strength. Strength is the key that holds all this mobility and flexibility work together. What we're going to do is we're going to raise up onto our toes, and this can be quite hard, so you might need to balance up against the wall. We're going to raise up onto our toes with straight and locked legs, and I'm going to let go, and I'm going to start to balance on one leg. You're going to notice right away how hard the calf has to work in this position, and it's going to be strengthening that area. Your big toe also is getting stretched and loaded at the same time. Now, we want to do 30-second holds at least. A minute would be preferable, but we need to work our way there. If you're able to do it off the wall, that's awesome, but you might realize this is quite the balance challenge. I want you to think this comes straight from ballet and is incredibly hard and deceiving. What we want to do is we also want to challenge our balance by taking our opposite leg in different directions to make our ankle and big toe and calf work together in cool ways. So once again, if you need to start up against the wall, that's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to do a straight leg out in front. I'm going to take that leg out to the side, and then that leg out to the back. Out to the front, out to the side, and out to the back. Now the whole time my heel is wanting to go to the ground, try to keep that heel as high and as far away from the ground as possible. Once again, start on the wall, and as you get stronger and develop stability in this position, then we want to go off the wall, but you'll be amazed how tricky and challenging this seems. So I balance, I get my heel off the ground, come out in front, out to the side, and back. Tap if you need to stabilize, out in front, out to the side, and back. All right, Wolfpack, that's episode 1 in our Toes to Nose Mobility series. Today you learned how the big toe and the ball of the foot are very important when it comes to keeping your body healthy and moving well. You need to spend lots of time in these areas, and I would recommend daily. No matter if you're doing stuff with your upper body or lower body, we always start with the foundation, which is your big toe and the ball of the foot. I hope you learned something new. I hope this video was clear. If you have any questions, just comment below or send me an email. If you like this video, feel free to share it, and I'll see you guys in episode 2.